Well, hello, Elly. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How's everyone in the chat? Let me look here. Victor, Malte, waiting this so much. I'm hyped. Yes, you should be. Sharon, hello. How are you? How are you doing today? Angie, Amy, yeah, let's rock. Okay. Australia, please post where you are viewing this from, right? That'll be interested. See how many time zones we have covered. We have Germany, we have Australia. Australia. It must
UK.
be, yeah, UK, Canada here, London, New York City, Italy, Toronto. Hey, I'm a bit to the east. I'm in the Laurentians Switch Media Tube. Portugal, Chicago, London, Dubai. I love Dubai. Um, I did some work a few times there. It's a really really nice place. Arizona, United Arab Emirates, Los Angeles. Wow, it's Brooklyn, Poland, Colombia. Oh my God, this is fantastic. This is fantastic. France. What else do we have here? New York, Egypt. Um, yeah, we Dean. I'm sorry, we can't do anything in terms of the upgrades and all that. You do have to contact tech support. Okay, Nigeria, Colorado, yeah, Scarborough from Toronto, Des Moines, Philadelphia, Belgium, Brazil. This is fantastic. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. So today we have a couple of exciting things. I will have to go through the housekeeping, so please pay attention or go get some coffee. And I'm going to put on the housekeeping and post a little link in the chat, hopefully the correct one, but hey, doesn't matter. So let's go here to the comments. If you click on this link, you'll get to this page here that has all the links to the Maxon events, Cineversity, sign up for newsletters and information, go and see the training team YouTube channel, and of course, ask your questions for the Ask the Trainer and any other questions you may have in terms of how tools work and so forth. Licensing and stuff like that, we can't deal with. Anything that you think is tech support, please contact your customer service in your region. And but for technical questions about how Cinema 4D works, tools and stuff like that, please send us questions. So in the Maxon events, you'll find a list with all the great stuff that's going on, shows that are coming up, and so forth. And don't forget that in January, we're going to have Dominic Rookley, that is a Sine nodes and particle aficionado and genius. And he's going to be showing some of his amazing work and explain a lot of things. So stick around in January. Don't go on holidays. If you do, just make sure you take your internet with you. And of course, you can watch these live on the Maxon training team and the Maxon YouTube channel. But if you want to watch them recorded with timestamps and comments that are kindly provided by our mentor and very good friend, Dr. Sassy, uh, please watch them on the Maxon training team YouTube channel. And of course, I have to repeat this every single time because you have to learn ZBrush. Anyone that has any artistic inclination, go get yourself ZBrush. And now with ZBrush on iPad, there's no excuse that I don't have space on my desk. Well, I'm talking about myself. I don't have much space. It's full of garbage outside the camera frustum. Everything within the camera cone, everything in the camera cone here is nearly perfect. I see a glare on my back screen there.
Yeah, my view of mine is, yeah, a lot less neat than it looks.
That is show business, though. That's
Mm.
like they used to shoot westerns back in the day, where there was no real village; it was all facade. And of course, don't forget to go to Cineversity to watch the latest and greatest videos. Oh, I always look at this guy and I feel, hey, look at this cheeky bugger. Okay. Having said that, let's begin. Let's show our faces here. So, is everyone prepared? I'm going to try and get as much as possible on this. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to, first of all, open a new scene. I've got some scenes open here. I'm going to start talking about one of the new features of the particle system, which is custom properties. And we'll take it from there. Now, if you go to your project settings, simulation particles, you will see there's a couple of new tabs, and things have shifted around. This came down here. Now we have on the top the particle properties. Now, these are the standard particle properties that you're used to. And by the way, if you miss any details, if I skip anything, well, I am going to do comprehensive tutorials about custom properties and about the Particle Nodes Modifier, and we will even proceed with some more nodes tutorials as we move forward in the next few months. So the reason these are exposed now is that we can lighten the load from the GPU because any of these built-in attributes that you don't require for your particular simulation, whatever that is, you can turn them off and you will save VRAM. And we know that VRAM is the most valuable commodity when it comes to GPUs. And here we have this new tab that says Particle Custom Properties. And you can just add as many as you want, and you can set the type. Now, what I've made, and what I'd like you to do now is take a screen grab of this. I'm going to leave it on for a couple of seconds. This has a little chart that allows you to know for various of the particle parameters what's the expected, the recommended type, and what's the accepted type. And I'm going to explain what this means in a second. But in any case, you can use you have to use a unique name. If I try to name this the same, it won't let me do that. So all the particle property names need to be different from each other. And you designate what type it is. And using that chart, it won't be a problem. Now, this does require a slight understanding on what you would need for a certain thing to do. But I think it's not that difficult to start getting into it when you get into more programmatic things. So let me remove this and this and this. And I remove this, doesn't matter. So what are these custom properties about? Well, let's go to my particles layout. And let's create most basic of emitters, the basic emitter. You will see that in the emitters, we have these new output tabs. And if you click on it, the emitter, the basic emitter, allows you to create a custom property. In this particular case, this is going to be a Boolean one. If a particle was born, and it will be yes if it was born and no if it wasn't. Now, I don't know how that works, the no, but it allows you to create a custom property for a particle that was born, and also the UVW coordinates of that particle in terms of where it is in space. This makes a bit more sense if we create a mesh emitter. I'm going to create a sphere. I'm going to create a mesh emitter with a sphere as the source, and the output now has other attributes. So the born again, the point index, if you're using point emission, will turn on. And if it's not point emission, it's surface emission, you can have the normal direction of that particular polygon or the UVW coordinate of that polygon. Now, let me tell you what you can do with these things. First of all, how do we create it? Because the way you create these custom properties and load them in these is something that we are still working on. You can do it. It's not difficult, but it probably will improve in the future. So I want a normal and a UVW coordinate. Both of these are vectors because they need an X, Y, Z coordinate. So I'm going to go to my properties here and add a vector. There it is. I'm going to call this my norm, which is a normal. You can put a name. I just like to put my to distinguish it from any other parameters. I'm going to create one more. I'm going to make this a vector. I'm going to call it my UVW. Now, what we just did here is when a particle is going to be born, as they're going to be right now, these particles, other than their position, alignment, age, and all the other parameters that a particle can also have these. And I just need to tell the emitter that the object's normal, the polygon that birthed that specific particle. So if we go here, right? So this particle was born on this polygon. This polygon has a normal direction that goes outwards. And that direction is going to be recorded in this. So let's go and load it here. My norm is the normal, and my UVW is the UVW coordinate. So from now until the end of this particle's life, amongst all the other data it has with it, it also has these two custom properties. Now, the question becomes, what do we do with these? I mean, why would I want custom properties? Well, there's a sample file I made, and now I've got too many things here, so I need to go here and read the whole names. Something that has back and forth, okay? So let me show you an example of how you can use this. This is this does two things. The first thing is it uses the mesh emitter, and it exports that UVW coordinate in a coordinate. As you can see, I'm a person of habit. It's called my UV. That means that the moment that point is born on the surface, it's going to get that UV position from the object it was emitted from. And in my material, in my Redshift material, what I've done here is I'm reading that vector user data called myUV. Because of compatibility reasons, in Cinema 4D, in the case of UVs, you may sometimes have to invert the V, which is the Y. And this is simple. You just take your vector scalars. You can even make a little capsule out of this and reuse it. You subtract that value from 1, that's sort of inverting it, and you put it back there, and then you put it in the offset. If I put it directly in the offset, let me show you what's going to happen, because it is important. Let me go and render. So I'm going to get rid of my plane. The particles are on frame 2. And if I go to my Redshift, oh, I can't move this. Great. So I need to go to my Redshift layout over here, Windows and layouts. I don't like that. And I can't see my Redshift layout. I could just bring up the, whoops. Where was I? There we go. That's our scene. And this is my Redshift layout. I just want my Redshift layout. Now, if I press play, I need to go and advance 1 frame because I changed scene. What we're seeing here is the particles. So particles over here. And I don't know. Oh, I think I've got it open twice. And you can see the image is upside down. So I just want to show why I needed to do this. You just invert the Y. But what you're seeing here is not the plane. What you're seeing here is the little optimized sphere that the particle is, that has taken the color or has moved in the, am I still online? Because I don't know what I did, but my computer seems frozen.
All looks fine to
All looks
me.
fine. All right, you can see the mouse moving and all that.
Yep, been following along.
Let me just do a quick whatever. It's probably my graphics card. I use old computers, right? This is I've got an RTX 5000. I've had this computer for, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years or something like that. My Mac Pro is from 2010 and it still works. I don't want modern things. I want nice old things.
It's not about the hardware.
Let me bring it back. That was it. I just so let me quickly go and find that thing again. Sorry about that. And it's the back and forth. There we go. So as I said before, we're back here. I emit my particles, and you're going to see the particles come up. There you go. And in this material, I'm using this inverted thing, and I'm just driving the texture's offset using that custom attribute. And what that does is it moves, imagine if you move the image through the particles for each and every one of the particles. But what it means in practice is that you can actually render now the particles from the position they were when they were emitted. And watch this. As the particle simulation evolves, each particle is going to retain its color. All right. So you can do dissolving effects with particles and so forth. Now, additionally to that, I've done one more thing because I thought it would be fun. I went to created a time condition because all these things work together. And you can use your conditions and your modifiers and all that to read and modify custom attributes and so forth. So what I'm doing with this time condition, I'm saying that when the time of the scene is less than 2 frames, just because I want to catch it in the beginning, I'm recording the X position of the particle. So when you're here, for each particle, I'm recording, let me just go here. For each particle, I'm recording its X position, its Y position, and its Z position, right? And I'm putting those in a custom attribute. And if I go to my simulation particles and close this, I have this initial position, which is a vector, and it's a meter because that's how positions are measured. So I'm putting each one of the X, Y, and Z components of the position of each particle. And this is the position they were literally born at. And I'm storing that. And then what I'm doing, I have another time condition. After frame 100, so my simulation is evolving and everything's flying around, and those XYZ positions, the original position, is traveling with the particles. And at frame 100, I'm telling it to do something using our new Particle Nodes Modifier. I'm taking this initial position and I'm doing a recursive subtraction from the current position, which is going to make the particles go back to where they came from. Whoop. And there you go. So now we have resynthesized our image using particles, and you're going to get the same image at the end. So this is a very small example how you can do a double effect. Number one, use the UV properties of an object to colorize your particles. And second of all, store the original position where the particle was born so that at a later time, using any mechanism you wish, you can bring them back to this. Now, I would say this sort of sounds a bit complex, but the good news is that there are ways to use these tools, whether it's the custom properties, which you can use independently of the Particle Nodes Modifier, or the Particle Nodes Modifier, which you can use independently from there. These are two different tools. Now, I'm going to get a bit into the Particle Nodes Modifier because everyone wants to see that as well. And I'm going to start with the simplest form of doing something. We're going to start from scratch. So I'm going to go and create a very simple basic emitter. And the way the Particle Nodes Modifier works is very similar to all the other particle modifiers. If it's a child of a particle group, it will evaluate those particles. If it's outside, it will evaluate all the particles and so forth. It has some little secrets, though. One of them, you can take a look here, which I'm going to talk about in tutorials. For now, I'm going to leave it at default. The other one is fields. Now, let me make a little sort of digression. When you go to the field condition is an on-off. It's a condition. If the particle is in part of the field that is larger than 50%, because this is 50%, then do something. If it's not, then don't do anything. But what if I want to use any of the values of the field? So let's take this field here. A field has a value, a color, and a direction. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the value, and it's just dragged into here. So I'm going to use the linear field as a mask. So what can I do with this? Well, the particle nodes modifier receives for each particle the position, unique ID, and all these properties, plus it can receive a custom or property, type property. I can get a particle property for the particle that's coming in. So what you see here is a loop. First particle comes in, you do what you do. The second particle comes in, it does what it does, and goes on and on and on. I can also get arrays. I can get all the particle data of the scene in one go and go and pick what I want from that. I can also go and get the array of any property I want. So all the data that's associated to particle simulation is available in here. Now let's go to what we're doing here. The particles are moving in a certain direction. We can see they're going in the Z direction. I'm going to make them slightly bigger. And I want to use the direction of the field. Now, for anyone that doesn't really know, the field usually is used with the value. So it's 0 on one side and 1 where it has the arrow. But also a field has a direction. Wherever you see the little arrow, you'll find that in the target, effector, and a few other places. So I'm going to use this as a mask. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get, let's get the position. Right? I'm going to get the position. And I'm going to add a vector. I type advec, and I can go and add a vector. I get the position and feed the position out. And I'm going to go and add 1 in the y. And this is what this is going to do. The particles are going to go upwards because with each iteration, 1 centimeter is added to their position. That's what we do. It's like going up the stairs. 1 stair at a time takes us 1 unit of stairs at a time. But I don't want this to be just like that. I want to be able to mask that value using my field. So you can see here we have feed a field value, field direction, and field color. So at any given moment, I may say, you know something, this 1 here, I'm not going to do it 1. I'm going to do a scale. A scale is an interesting node that allows you to pretty much multiply things. I'm going to get the field value, and I'm going to scale, let's say 10 centimeters and feed it in the y. What's going to happen now? The field, depending on where the field is, and let me add more of these, I can change when these things are going up and when they're going down. So even doing something simple as this, as just adding a unit based on the masking of the field, automatically, immediately gives you much more power over what you're doing. And you can affect the position, radius, the velocity, the color, or anything like that, including the custom attributes. So what if I want to use this to define direction? Well, let me remove this scale for a second. And what if I want to do, I'm going to go to my Particle Nodes Modifier and say, you know, I don't want the value. You can get them both, but now I just want the direction. And the direction usually is from the lower values to the higher values. So here, this field is this direction. It's now pointing to the plus Z. Whereas I'm moving up, if I rotate it, now it's pointing upwards. So wherever the arrow is pointing, that's the direction of the field. And I'm going to take the field direction and add it here. You know, so the field direction is going to define which way they're going to go. Look at that. And they're going up. And if I want to make this bigger, then I change my scale to vector. I say, bring the field direction in here, put this here, and now I can multiply this and make them go faster and faster or slower and slower. And if that's not enough, you can actually use the same field or another field to mask the effect and use that in here. So you can start now adding various fields. Let's create another linear field. Why not, if we can do that? I'm going to create another linear field. I'm going to put that on Z as well. And I'm going to call this mask. And I'm going to make sure that the one is direction, the other one is value. And what I'm going to do is get the value and put it here. So what should happen now is that one of the fields controls the direction, the other one controls the orientation. And I can move my mask around, I can bring it in, I can move it out, and now they're not going to turn because they're not masked, and then I can bring it in, that they're going to start to turn. I can even put another multiplier if I wish over here, a different scale, and so forth. For anyone that's interested in wrangling data, this is a time to get into it. So this was just an example of how you can use fields. And the great thing is that you can use it with any kind of data. You can do any kind of transformations. Plus, it also complies to the values the field has. So let me give you a quick example here. I'm going to delete this. I'm just putting the field value, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the field value and put it in the Y, just like I did earlier. Remember I did that earlier? And I'm going to get this back to 0, 0, and 0, okay, and bring it closer. Let me give you some more visual space here. Okay, so what this should do is it's going to get the value from the field and start taking them up by one step, because the fields by definition are clamped at 1. If I unclamp this and go and remap it, now the values I'm going to be exporting is from 0 to 200, which is 2000%. So you don't even need to do the math. I'm adding, field value. Oh yeah, my bad. See, that's why you need to be careful. I don't have a value, it's off. I've got the direction. So now this is going to work. There you go. So now the field itself is providing 100% the value of how much these are going to change. You can go from 0, you can animate this, you can use this with noises and so forth. Talking about noises, you can go here and you can say, you know something, I'm not going to use a linear field. Just turn it off. I'm going to use a random field. And now we're going to get all sorts of random particles going up and down. I can go and extend my max a bit less, maybe. There we go. So as they come in, you can see they're moving up in random speeds and going up and down, because they're going through the noise, etc., etc. So using fields and field values now is pretty much a breeze if you know how to wrangle data. So let's check a few questions.
I was going to say, we have a couple of questions coming in. Dean was wondering, why does the scale node affect the intensity of direction, but not the scale of the particles? It seems a little sort of confusing, I'm guessing, by the naming of the nodes.
Oh, because each parameter is independent. So it's called scale, but it doesn't scale the particle. It's just a value, right? So let me disambiguate this just in case. So each particle, as I said, has these properties. One of them is the radius, okay? When I use a particle nodes modifier here, and I open it up, let's go to my nodes. There you go. The radius is a different parameter. Here it is. If you want to affect the radius, you do whatever I did before, and you affect the radius. So each one of these parameters can be independently affected by any of the other parameters. Example. It's always good to give an example. I'm going to set the draw radius so we can see the particles. And I'm going to leave them at the default 1. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell a particle to just become bigger the more it travels. Now you can do this with modifiers, that particular thing, but I'm going to show you how you can do it here. The distance it's traveled is this. It's just a unit, how many centimeters the particle has traveled. So what I need to do is take the distance. I'm just going to do it directly and put it in the radius. Now you will see these are going to get big very, very fast. All right? They're just getting big. This is just a number depending on how much a particle is traveling. And this is another number that tells it to become bigger or smaller. Give it. And what I'm telling it here is take the distance and put it in the radius. what I can do here is do a range mapper. And I can say, well, now it's set to 1 to 1. It's a linear correlation. When the value is 0, the value output is going to be 0. When the value is 1, the output is going to be 1. When it's 2, 2, 3, 3, and so forth. I want it to grow. I want my particle to grow to 10 centimeters from 0 when it travels 100 centimeters. This is the input. So the input gives you the distance. And I'm just saying that take values 0 to 100 and map them to 0 to 10. Now you're going to see that they're going to grow slower. And again, you can do this using modifiers, but this is a very simple way to explain how these parameters work. And you can use any of these parameters. You can use the age. Let's take the age now and do the same thing. It's just going to grow at different rates, and that's because age is in seconds. So 100 seconds is quite a bit. So I'm going to put it to 2, and now you will see that every 2 seconds, the particle becomes 10 centimeters. So in 4 seconds, so 4 times 30, it's going to become, what is that? 20 centimeters. And this is how we drive the data. And the great thing is that you can do some interesting math in here. Okay. So I hope that was, we're not scaling the particle essentially, right? We're just wrangling the data. There's no, let me put it this way. Inside this graph, the graph does not know it's dealing with particles. The only thing it knows, it's dealing with data. And we know that this data is coming from particles and going to particles. The system doesn't know that. It just reads streams of data. We know it's all particle, but the system doesn't. Just sees numbers. Anything else we have?
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for that explanation. Yeah, we had one from Demi's Art. So this was back when you were talking about the UV properties.
Yes.
Can the new UV property be used to make particles morph, not only in shape, but also in texture from object to object?
Demis, what do you mean particles morphing? A particle is just a dot.
I would assume it means the shape in which the particles are perhaps making up, morphing from one to another.
Let me see.
Also then taking, I'm guessing, that texture or that color data from one and then to another. So they then morph their color as well as their.
Well, you can if color is data, right? So you can read the data from any source and apply it. You just need to find a way to correlate that. If you have a specific example about what you would like to do, then let me know like what you're trying to do, if you can describe it, and I'll see if I can come up with an answer based on that. Otherwise, you know where to find me. You do know where to find me. Let me open. I want to show something that may be part of a solution, which it was not part of the presentation, but I'm going to show it anyway. So let me go.
We love a tangent, don't we?
Yeah, no, tangents is what I do. Let's see if I can find this. Let's see for the hello. Where is that? Let me put it by date, because maybe I don't understand Windows. I do not understand.
I mean, if your organization is anything like mine, mine is everything is saved to the desktop, and people think it's a joke.
Probably worse than yours, Elly. I'm gonna.
I don't know. That would be.
If I find it, I'm going to put it. So let's check out some of the other things that I've prepared here to give a better understanding and see what other questions come through and so forth. So I've got this. I mean, this is just a similar example of what I showed earlier with the field direction. And here I'm again doing the velocity, and you will see that we can create something like a repulsion effect. And let me make this 2. And this repulsion effect is just I'm adding the values, and because the spherical field has a huge value, it just pushes them in the other direction. So this is how you can create some sort of avoidance for a sphere just by adding the velocity to the field direction. And the sphere, by definition, the field direction is from the center outwards, right? The small value is here, the large value is out there. You can turn this into an attractor if you invert it. So let's rewind. Oh, it goes the other way. Oh no, actually the opposite. Let's see if I can do this like this. Can it suck them in? 0 to minus 100%. I need to unclamp it. Maybe if it doesn't work, I'm going to drop it. I'm thinking of too many things. Let's go here. Let's move this up. I need more monitors. Oh no, it is unclamped. So remapping. Where did everything go? It's going the opposite way. I just need to figure out why it's going the opposite way, and it's not an attractor. Anyhow, we have an attractor for that. All right, let me show you this, because this is something that you will like, Elly. So this is a simple curl noise, which we do without using a field force. Now, Elly has shown in certain tutorials and presentations how to make a curl noise using a vector volume and all that. Gone are those days. Gone are those days. In this particular case, you just what am I talking about? Let me just go and do it. So this is the setup. Is this? This is it. You do a cross product with a certain vector. Let me show you how it works. 0, 0 Sine. Let's go. Particles. I forget where everything is, so I have my particle layout. So I'm going to create this beautiful emitter here, and I'm going to make it bigger. 1,000 particles. And there we have them, and no velocity. I want them to be still because I want to control their velocity using whatever I want to do. And there you go. We're going to get a bunch of particles. Now, I'm going to go and create a Particle Node Modifier here. And in the Particles Node Modifier, I'm going to add a random field. The default random field is a Perlin noise, which is pretty good for these things. I'm going to scale it up a bit. You can also see it if you go to the view settings. This is the noise, right? And I'm going to set it to direction. And the directions are going to go from the smaller values to the larger values. So essentially, it's going to point from the reds towards the whites, the yellows. Sorry about that. And what the cross product does, two things you need to learn when you work with vectors: a cross product and a dot product. They're very easy to use, and they do some very simple things. The cross product will give you, it's the ideal way to give you a perpendicular vector. So if you cross one vector for the other, it will give you the third vector that points upwards. So we get a perpendicular thingy here. And what we need in this particular case is I'm going to cross the field direction with the y with the y up. And what this does is it creates, oh, it's very slow here. Yep, I think I need to accelerate it a bit. So we get the field direction. Oh, no. What am I doing? It's not the velocity. Did I put in the velocity? Yeah. Oh my Lord. I just did it here. I'm losing it. Cross product. Oh, I have to cross it with the Z. Dummy me. A small mistake, but you know, it happens with the Z.
It's good to know you're human.
Well, or I did it on purpose,
like the rest of us.
Or I did it on purpose.
We'll never know.
I'm getting some small movement. There you go. Very small movement. And what I could do here, the simplest way to do this is to use the scale. And the scale, and I think if you put scale vec, oh, it doesn't allow you. Some of these things you add vec and it will give you that. So you can just scale a vector. And this way you can control the speed by which it goes, right? So let's set this to 5. You can see they're starting to move faster, 60. But there you go. And imagine these are, let's say, 60 centimeters per second or something like that. And this motion, all you have to do to this motion, so again, you get the cross product with the z vector, and I'm just scaling up. I'm just making it faster. And let's go and grab this, go to MoGraph and use a tracer. And there we go. So now we have this curl noise on the surface. Now there's a permutation of this because a flat surface, it's easy because you get, you just use a specific vector to do it. And this is the z, right? Because we got a flat object, this is the z. So we're taking whatever that vector is and we're crossing it with the z, and it gives us this flat thing here, which is curling around. But you can actually, let me see if it's surface. So this is an equivalent example, but with an object. Now the problem is, where do we get that, that the z I had before? Because this is not on one plane, it's on a surface. Well, in this particular case, what I've done is I created a custom property, which is basically, forget about my UV, it's my normal. And the mesh emitter can output for each particle the normal direction of the point it was emitted, as I showed you in the beginning. And in here, what I'm doing is I'm getting the particle property. In order to use this get particle property, you go here and you say get particle property. There you go. What is the property name and what is the type? Go back here and it's my normal, copy this, and it's a vector. So paste it in here and say vector. So now for each particle, alongside its position and everything else, this normal comes in. And I'm crossing it with the field direction just like I did before. So now that cross product is happening on that original particle's normal direction. It doesn't change. It's just the normal direction that was stored when it was emitted. And you can do some really interesting effects. I've added the surface attract. If you don't mind the particles going a bit astray, which is another interesting effect you can do that. So that some of your particles are going to leave the sphere, and maybe you go to your tracer and you say from end and you say I want 65 with a 30 spread, and you'll see that this looks like some sort of fuzzy thing, unfuzzying. Anyway, it's interesting. That's what I have to say. It's interesting. And again, it's just based on the knowledge that when you cross two vectors, you get the perpendicular one, or something like that. If anyone's a developer or good at math, don't criticize me. All right. So that will be another example of using that. Now I want to show you some experimental stuff, right? Because sometimes you do things and you're not really sure why exactly this is happening. So this little example here, I'm taking the age particle and I'm using it in a sine wave. Sine waves go up and down, up and down, up and down. And then remapping this. I don't know why. And I'm changing the alignment of the particle, right? And then I'm just turning it towards that direction. And this is what happens, which I find extremely hilarious. Yeah, and this is one of the things I like. So this is math. This is visualized applied math. And you need to know a couple of things to play around with these things, and a few nodes and all that. And, a range mapper is simple, it maps ranges and all that. And yeah, you can get interesting stuff. You can use this, right? You can use this. You can freeze the spline and say, oh, I'm making ornamental, an ornamental porch, and I need these ornaments. So just go to the tracer, right click and say current state to object. And there we go. We have little ornamental things in our scene. We can use them any way we want. So that was just an indication of, you can do very simple experiments playing around with some of these things, sine, cosine, and whatnot. I mean, let's see what will happen if I switch the sine to a cosine. I don't even know what it's going to do. Is it going to be similar? Could be similar. Yeah, just a different, it starts from a different point. So similar to that. And you can go on and play with these. You can play with these ranges and see what happens if I put -5. Sometimes much weirder things happen. That doesn't look very much different. I don't like that. You can go and say, let's go and say 1 to 16, 0 to 16. What is that going to do? Too small. And you just experiment with these numbers. You just experiment. Let's go 0.2. Now it's doing all these weird things. Oh, that's interesting. What do you think, Elly? Is that interesting?
I like
Ornaments. It continues, right? Look, continues. Anyway, that was a little experiment I was playing with today. What else do I have here? Service call node. Simple. So another thing that may interest Elly and any other people that do rendering is that you can actually use these attributes in Redshift. So here, what I've done is I've created a my_m for my emission. It's a color A. It's RGBA color. And what I'm doing here, I'm just emitting these particles. Just simple particles emitting. And I have a color mapper that maps the color. And depending on their age, the color is going to change. And it's going to start from that color on the left, from bluish. And as they age, they're going to become redder and then yellow. And at the end, ooh, look at that. They're emissive, right? They become emissive. How do I do that? Well, this color mapper is driving the target property my_m. And I'm using the age percentage, and I'm using this gradient. And in Redshift, by the way, when you get user data, let's get color user data. The new custom stuff is where it says standard particles. So wherever you see standard particles is where you're going to have the new particle systems attributes, whether they're custom or the ones that are built in, unless they overlap with the ones that they use in X particles and so forth. So I'm getting the color user data. This is the color, standard particles color. This is the color that comes from the particle or from the emitter. If you go to the properties and look at the color, this is the color. And here I select my_m and I'm driving the color of the emission. So now you have the ability with an extra custom channel to store other things besides the only RGB and an A. And you can use those in here to with the switch nodes, with whatever you want. But it's an additional layer of control you have over your particle simulations. Now, so this is one example here. Let me continue with a few more and keep an eye on the time. Good. I have plenty of time. So I've checked that one out. And now let's check out this. So let me close these. Oh, I'm not going to close them just in case anyone wants to ask a question. I'm going to show you some examples. And let's start with a simple sine. And this is just emitting a single particle, if I'm not mistaken, just a single shot. And here it's a bit more complex, but what I'm doing is I'm using, instead of the age or the distance, I'm just getting how far it's traveling on the z-axis. So this is how you do that. You say, well, from my position, split the vector. I can remove these because they're not going to be used. Take the z and modulo, go to my YouTube channel, YouTube/@Noseman, and I have a video on what modulo is. And what this does is every 200 units of x, it returns a number from 0 to 200 because it's the remainder. And I'm remapping that from -pi to pi. I don't even know why I did this, but when I do rotations, or I just use pi, and it's easy. You don't even need to remember the number. You go here and you say -pi, and it gives you that number. I mean, that alone, the ease of use makes me use pi. And I decompose a matrix from the alignment because I only want to affect the x, and I put it in the alignment. Again, these are experiments. And what this does is it creates this fully programmable sine wave. Now, the question is, why did you do that? Well, that's because you can extend this with a few more inputs. It's the same thing, a bit of randomness and all that. The same principle. Here I have the cosine. And what you can do here is random cosines. Not only random cosines, but I'm using the field value here to scale that using a random number. So when the field, which has been remapped like this, the frequency is lower and the amplitude bigger here. And as we go towards the lower value, it becomes smaller and then it becomes big again. So now I have a thing which is, it's got a bit of math in it. And let's make this a bit wider. So this is now a wave, which I can control using a linear field and change the way these oscillate, or just leave it here. And I can sculpt my particle motion and so forth. Now, the one thing I need to remind you about nodes is that for any one of these operations, you can go and create your own little asset for this. When you make something that does something, you can get the whole thing and you can group it. And you can say group nodes. Here it is. You can name it my thing. And you can even set it as an asset. Put some, proper naming, distance, or whatever else you want. What is this? Field value. And this is the alignment. And this is, the seed. I'm going to put UID for unique ID. And from this point onwards, and this is alignment. So let's say you did this and you're happy with it and it's working nicely and all that good stuff. You can create a copy of it. Everything's going straight. You can paste it in another scene. You can save it as an asset. And all you have to do is just follow the instructions you have here. So put the distance here, put the field value here, and put the alignment in here and connect everything to the alignment. So now I have my little asset, which I can reuse. You don't have to do it multiple times. You just make it once. And that's how the Rocket Lasso assets are made. But they spend more than 10 seconds doing them. Okay, let me see what other scenes I have here. Anything interesting? I do. You know what I'm going to do? Let's check some questions. Let's see what questions we have.
I was going to say I've got a few. I've been kind of going through and starring them. So let me go to the top. So Jason Wolf, first of all, what a great name that is, was wondering, when a particle is flowing along a spline, is there a way to vary the speed it travels along the spline, specifically relevant to other splines in the same scene? And never apologize for a tangent, Jason. We love a tangent.
Okay. So when a particle's flowing along a spline, is there a way to vary the speed it travels along the spline? Relevant. I mean, what does relevant mean? Programmatically, you will have to use something like Particle Node Modifier. All right, let's see what the spline follow spline gives us. The follow spline gives us as custom properties the inside effect radius, the distance, the segment index, so which segment on the spline you're on, and the t value. So this is a time value. So I assume that you can use those, because if you want to change the speed, let's say you're going or using the age, you use the source scale is what will define the speed. And I think it's 1 divided by the frames per second is, no, if you want, all right, no, 1 sec. If you want your particle to go from one part of the spline to the end, traverse all the spline in 4 seconds, you will divide 4 by the frames per second. Yes, that's what you need to do. So this is a general rule for the speed. So if you want it to go faster, so 3 divided by 30 frames per second. So it's that divided by FPS. Slower is this way, higher is this way. The follow spline itself does not allow you to program this, but that is something you need to extract programmatically using the parameters, knowing what segment index you are. The distance, all right, the distance, I'm not sure I know what distance that is. I'm not sure I know what distance that is. If it's the distance it has traveled in the spline. So what I'd like to do, because this is a very interesting, it's a very interesting question. Throw it on the form, the question form. Yeah, I'm trying to think with both sides of my brain, and I can't do that. So throw it on the form as a question, because this is an interesting one. I think distance is where it exists on that particular segment. I think. Let's bring up the help. Let's cheat. Here you get the shortest. Oh, it's the shortest distance between each particle and the spline as a floating point value. Exactly. So if you have a spline and you have a particle, let's say, start up here. If you have a particle here and another particle here and other particle here and so forth, distance is the closest point on the spline. Okay. Having said that, that may be the way to program something like that. But that's an interesting question. It's one of those setups that requires a bit of thought. So yeah, use the form to send that question. I can take a look, maybe tutorial, quick tip, or something like that, or even reply on the next ATT. Questions? Where are we?
Cool. So next up, we have from Sean. They're saying we're really liking some of the new additions, but wondering how you can account for different particle sizes, radius variance with collisions for the equivalent of a fluid grain sim.
We don't. You could do this programmatically using the Particle Nodes Modifier and compare particles within a certain range and finding their radii and getting them to bounce by changing. It needs programming. It's not impossible to do, but it requires program. We do not have a fluid grain solver and a particle-to-particle interaction other than the typical modifiers that blend, flock, and predator-prey. That is the answer.
Cool. Another one from Dynamic. I'm trying to make radius dissipation based on lifetime, but I couldn't extract the frame from lifetime because the lifetime input in the node editor is of type time. So I've thrown that out there.
I was trying to make radius dissipation based on lifetime. You couldn't extract the frame. Well, I don't know how you tried to do it, but using the Particle Nodes Modifier, you have access to all the relevant information you need. You have a time step, which is relative to the substeps, and it gives you the amount of physical time in seconds that was executed within each of these steps. The Particle Nodes Modifier allows you to execute every substep, the first substep or the last substep. So every substep, it's going to take into account every single one of these. So you can actually calculate all those things using the Particle Nodes Modifier. So if I had 6 substeps and go to the Particle Nodes Modifier and say every substep, this is going to execute 6 times before we go to the next frame. So if you're telling something to turn 1 degree on each frame, at the end of the frame, 1 degree at each evaluation, at the end of a frame, it's going to turn 6 degrees. But if you set it first or last, it will only execute the graph once. If you want to make something which takes into account the time step, then you make it every substep, and then you account for the time step to divide your value. So when they add up after whatever the sub-steps are, you're going to receive your final, the proper result. So there are ways to do that. And let me just see it again. So you have access to your time and the time step and or whatever you need in order to do this, plus the age, which is expressed in time. So if you're trying to do something specific, again, anyone that is trying to do a specific setup, send me your ideas. Maybe, I can help you move forward, or it can find itself in some sort of tutorial, something like that. Every one of you is better than me at coming up with ideas.
We have a bit of a Sine nodes question from Justin, wondering if and when there will be a Boolean object in Sine nodes, if there isn't already.
Yeah, as far as I know, there is none already. And for if and when questions, we can't reply to if and when questions. So Boole, there's a Boolean operator, but it's with numbers. We do not have a Boolean operator. Sorry, that's all I can say. I know it's not ideal, but yeah, we can't respond. Even if we did know, we couldn't say anyway. So I apologize.
I just wanted to make sure if there was one in there and we didn't know, sort of thing. So Demi's art's come back. So based on that previous question, so when you had the plane with the texture and the particles that were taking the color from that.
Yep.
So they were curious, let's say you had another plane or another mesh with another texture, and you morphed the particles or positioned them from one to the other. Would it take the texture, the color from one to the other?
No. Here I'm not even picking up the texture. Here I'm picking up a UVW position from where it's been emitted, which is provided to me by the emitter itself. The output UVW coordinates, this is provided by the emitter. So this is a plane which has normal UVs, 0 to 1 and 0 to 1. And the point that's here has a value of, let's say, 0.95 in the U and 0.92 in the V. And this particle starts flying away, and it goes on and on and on. And here it is, here it is, here it is, there it is. So that's whoops, I lost that particle. I'm joking, I didn't know what it was. So let's say this is the particle here. It's carrying with it a value, and that is just the value that the texture gives that particle using this. The particle itself does not carry any color. This is 100%, what I did is 100% a Redshift trick, where you get the UV position, it goes to the image, and because every texture has a UV position, and it just offsets that position by this value. And what happens is that that particle reads from the image that particular color. That's what happens. If you want to do what you're trying to do is, let's assume that the particles, you want them to read the color, I would say, from the mesh. Now, we can't directly do that currently. There is something we can do to simulate that. And I think it's a very good opportunity to show you how you would go and say, okay, I want the particle color, the actual color, to pick up from this image. And because it's not straightforward, I'm going to show you what you need to do. So first of all, we need a higher density mesh. And as high as possible, given circumstances, I'm going to go 200 by 200. The next thing you need to do is you need to add a vertex color to this. That vertex color, you need to use a shader effect, which is in here. If I'm not mistaken, no, it's never there. It's always here. Shader, shader, shader. There it is. In the shader effector, we need to load an image. And I'm going to grab that image from my hard drive and just throw it in. Custom attributes, text. Oh, no, that's from the asset browser. That's from the asset browser, and it's called, what was that called? No, that was, I had my image, I had my face. Of course I would have my face. That is Baby Dragon. So let's go and find it and throw it in there. So Baby Dragon, and let's go to this in the shader field, and let's drag it here. Boink. So now this vertex, I can delete the material. This vertex map now, what you see here is a vertex map that represents the same thing, right? So now we have the data, the image data, we have it embedded in our mesh, right? Remember, there's no material here, nothing. It's everything is on the shader field, which is driving the colors of each and every one of the points. So now let's go to the mesh emitter. And what can we do here? I'm going to go to points mode. Let's see. Point index. How would I? Oh, give me a second. I will go. I'm actually going to go to the surface properties and color. Look at the color. I'm going to put the color map. Good. So let's turn off the plane and advance one frame. Look at that. So now the particles, there's no redshift, there's no rendering going on here. The particles now have gone, and now I'm going to repeat how I did it, for one and only reason, because I need to remember this. You create your vertex color, you go to the mesh emitter, you go to the properties, and in the color tab, you add that vertex map in here. So now the particles are very happily living with these colors, and they're just going to fly away, and they're going to have these nice little colors. Now let's assume that you want these particles to go somewhere else, land somewhere else, and assume those colors. All right? What we need to do is, first of all, we have to, it's better practice. We don't have to guarantee this, but it's better practice if, and I don't even need this anymore. I don't want to subtract anything right now. I'm going to simplify this to see how far I can get. So I want these to land, let's say, on another plane. So I'm going to create another plane. I'm going to move it here. And I'm going to go and add another image. So let's see if I have an image of something extremely beautiful. What do you think, Elly?
Oh, stunning.
Stunning. So the question is, how do we read? How can we go and read the data from this? Now, there are a couple of ways, because our planes are the same, right? They've got the same points. Another thing we could do is emit a second batch of particles that emit static particles, and then use a particle nodes modifier to read from one and transfer the data to the other. That requires a bit of setting up. I'm trying to think if there's a better way. I'm going to try and see if I can get it to a certain point, and then I'm going to say we're running out of time, and we won't be able to do this. But let me think. Now, one thing that was has been improved in the node system is that I can take an object, for example, make it a child of a modifier or anything like that, and there is a new, you have the ability to add an input, which is an object child. And this is going to take the first child and bring in the geometry. With the geometry, it's probably going to bring in the colors, the vertex map colors from this. Let me go and change the name to avatar. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try it anyway. Dragon. So what have I done here? What have I done here? I've made this a child of the particle nodes modifier, and I right-clicked and I add in an input that says object link. And this, under this object child, it's giving me a bunch of data, including the geometry. Now, just to make things be a bit more less programmatic, I'm going to do a points emission so that I get one point, one particle per point, because I want the number of particles and the number of points I have here to be the same. It's just going to make things so much easier. Okay. So let's see what we can do now. I'm going to move these particles. I'm going to make them move that way. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I just don't want them to have that turbulence. I just want to see them in their proper color. Oh, and the colors didn't come through. Properties, where's my color? Vertex color. Oh, there we go. It's because I changed the name and it was saying vertex color instead of dragon. So that was, so here we have these points, and the particles, I don't want them to be moving. I want to see if I can change their color to match this one over here. So let me do a get geometry property get. That is a very specific node that reads, amongst other things, vector colors and vertex maps. And I'm going to use a second one. Okay, so this is going to return a bunch of numbers which represent the colors of this. And because I'm using the same points and I'm emitting from points, I think that if I get element, so get element is a way to extract one by one all the values from an array. Array is just a lengthy series of same things. It could be numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 16, 59. That's an array. It's just a little line of numbers. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, here's my array. My particle unique ID is the index, and put this in the color and advance. It is a bit, so we saw the colors changing, but there's something about this that didn't work. Maybe I need to go to there's one more thing, group in value, not current index. Do this again. No, current index. So you can see the colors. These are the colors that my image has, but for some reason it doesn't match the same colors to that. So see, this is something that I want to take a look at, because these are purple and yellow, and the other ones are orange, silver, and brown. That's interesting. Are these the same? Yeah, they are the same. I would assume that the particles are emitted from the same indices, but that may not be the case. So this is something that I need to investigate. The ability to transfer colors, as you can see, from one thing to the other. The question now is, I'm not sure how to synchronize them. That's the thing here. And there's definitely a little, some sort of secret here, because obviously the way the mesh emitter emits these particles and make sure its points doesn't appear to be exactly the same as the indices of the points. And maybe we can check this. And let me go to my standard layout. So let me check this out. So if I go to this plane and show indices, point indices. So let's go closer. See where are my zeros and where am I? So 200 is the bottom right. Okay. So if I emit particles and get my particle group, I don't see the indices. Cool. Too bad. I thought I would see the particle indices, which I don't. Yes, that's an interesting one. That's an interesting one. My demonstration was definitely not perfect, but it does show that there are ways to extract data from one to the other. I just need to find out, because this is a very recent development, right? The very specifics of how the system expects. I mean, I would expect that the point indices of this may align with the particle indices, but why would they? If you think about it, that's just some sort of weird, thing I probably made up, a weird expectation. But see, this is a nice question. I'd like to do this and make something of this. So thank you for the question. Let's try a few more. Good. I feel, I want to save this. So let me quickly save this. Let me go here to make sure. But find a question or two for me. And this is to investigate. And this is transfer colors indices. Good. Next.
Okay, ready for the next one? So we've got, with these new particle systems, can advection simulation be achieved in more complex simulations, or is there a limit to how much intensity we can work with?
I mean, if we're talking about advection, we're talking about something that already exists, and we do have pyro advection. And I'd like a bit more understanding what this question is, but we can do particle advection, and it's very easy, and it's been shown many times. You just make your pyro simulation. You go and you do a pyro emitter, and there is, and then you use the same sphere to emit. Do a mesh emitter. Let's emit a shot of, I don't know, 1.5 million particles, and let's go and get from the simulate the modifiers, and I'm going to do a pyro advect, and there you go. So we have advection, and you don't even need to see the pyro anymore. So we can turn this off, and I can turn off from the settings. So pyro, go down here, draw, get rid of it, and there you go. I mean, this is your advection. So unless you mean something else, there's nothing complex about doing advection from pyro. And this is 1.5 million particles. You can push it. I think this is 5 million particles. And because it's all contained on the GPU, that's lame. I want 10 million particles. I just want it to go a bit slower or crash. It won't crash, but it will go a bit slow. There you go. No, still too fast. It's too fast for my liking, Elly. What can I say? So 10 million particles advecting. Maybe the question meant something else.
I reckon that definitely answers the intensity part of the question. What if you had like static particles, like a static plane of particles, and then you used pyro to then advect them from their static state to a motion state?
That's what I did right now. What I did, it's just that I coincidentally just I did it on purpose. I just put a mesh emitter to emit from the same part. I can just create a static particles D and a basic emitter, and it's amazing how Elly sees it. Now that you said it, I know what you're talking about. But see, that's the difference between you and I. I can't see it before someone says it. So
I'm here to just nag with ideas, basically.
I wish I could do that. So there you go. Here are the particles. There's no motion in the. By the way, there's a very special guest in the chat. I don't know if I should say who and what. He can identify himself, but it's a person I'm very thankful for, because he had a hand in a lot of this stuff. Okay, there you go. Is that what you want, Elly?
Exactly. That's exactly what I wanted. Thank you.
Why didn't I think about this? It's so simple.
Mm.
So basically, I just created a static plane here. Oh, what am I talking about now? I think I'm losing my marbles. A, a static emitter with a shot of particles without any speed, and it's just waiting for that smoke to come and pick it up. I'm going to turn on the smoke. Let's draw the pyro, and there you go. So this is what's happening in the background, and it's affecting the particles. There you go. There's your effect. And it's all this is 10 million particles. Is it? Am I sure it's 10 million? I'm in doubt. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. No, that was 1 million particles. I'm a fake. I'm a fake. This is 10 million particles. Okay. I feel much better now.
The fact you've got like the pyro sim going, moving it around, and then it's advecting 10 million particles is, I mean, very impressive.
Yeah, hopefully we're going to get more stuff working on the GPU. One thing I need to say about this is that Particle Nodes Modifier, in order to calculate within the nodes context, it requires to download the particles to the CPU. So for very high particle counts, you are going to get a reduction in performance, because the data you're wrangling in here not only requires to be processed in CPU. So anything that happens in here happens in CPU, and then it goes out here and it's sent to the GPU for further processing. And that requires the particles to be downloaded. So if you go to the pyro settings here, you will see there are some settings about, not pyro, particles, where it compactifies, it downloads the particles automatically on or off. And this is the mechanism it uses to decide which particle data is going to come here. And after it's wrangled, how to send it back. So, for example, I'm not going to try to do a field thing with 10 million particles, because why wouldn't I? I don't care. I'm going to try. I'm going to start with 1 million particles. I shouldn't be doing this, but I can't help myself. So I'm just going to get the position. So I'm just reading the positions and writing them. Now, to be fair to everyone, I'm going to start with let's say 100,000 particles. Okay. So, okay, 100,000 particles. That gets a pass. Let's multiply it by 10. A million particles. Oh, Lord. What's going to happen now? Yeah, are we getting, yeah, it's slight performance. All right. So we have a million particles here. So let's try with 5 million particles. Is it wrangling the data, or is it just passing it through? These developers are sneaky. You know what they do? They put all these optimizations to make things faster. I mean, that's a terrible thing to do. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually do something here. I'm going to add a vector. So arithmetic, add vector. I'm going to add 1. Okay. Now I know it's doing something. See, it's adding 1. That looks fast. Come on. How do you do this? Is the performance dropping? What's happening, Elly? It's dropping a bit, right? This is 1 million particles, isn't it? So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's 1 million particles. Let's go 5 million particles. There we go. Okay. Now we see the performance drop with 5 million particles. This is unacceptable. Okay, so it's 5 million particles. Come on, let's be serious. This is astonishing. I'm going to go for 10 million. I want to see what happens with 10
Are
million.
you just trying to?
I'm trying to see, because I was expecting this to be slower, but they always surprise me, right? All right, this is not real time, but it's 10 million particles that, listen to the journey, right? I need to show my face while this is playing and all that. They're being generated on the CPU. The data is going up on the GPU. It's the pyro is going up on the GPU. It does one step calculation or substep or whatever that's going on there. It downloads all the particles back to the CPU RAM. It adds that 1 centimeter. It sends it back to the GPU, and still with 10 million particles. And you can work. Okay, that's crazy. Leave me alone. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go home. Basil says he's trying to give me a heart attack.
I was going to say, yeah, I think you are. No, but it's like you said, it's extremely impressive to see these kind of like performance updates that have come in the last few releases, as well as particles and things like that.
Yeah, it's impressive, and it only gets better. See, I can say that. I'm allowed to say that. It only
We're
gets.
allowed to say it gets
we're
better.
allowed to say that. It only gets better. What else? Was there something else I wanted to say? Yeah, let's see. Any other questions here? Sorry, I've lost. The thing is that we get caught up in the moment with what we're doing. It is a lot of fun. I know that people's livelihoods rely on these things, but it's fun as well to play around and see what can happen and all that. And I get caught in the moment, and although I use these things constantly, I'm still impressed by the quality of work that our amazing developers and many others are doing.
For me, it's also how I learn. Is just through sometimes playing. I agree, you have to have a certain understanding of the software to be able to have that freedom of play. But for us especially, we are in a position where we get these lovely tools that our developers create, and we get to quite literally play around with them to be able to then have the knowledge to then teach it, just like you have now.
We're not doing it to have fun, right? We're doing it for everyone else.
If Maxon asks, it's because it's work.
Yes.
Whereas really it's just because it's a lot of fun.
All right, possible to make the particles fly back. It's 3D good. I did that example position, like the follow position thing. Yes, and that was one of the examples. Let me bring it back, back and forth. So this is an example of what I did earlier with the particles. So they will fly away, and they would come back to their original positions. I could make them fly anywhere. This is just a very simple position because at the birth, I recorded the X, Y, and Z positions into a custom attribute called my initial position, and then I brought it back in step by step. So you can, and that's the idea of custom attributes. So you can choose when and what to record, and you can reuse it later on. And I did want to show a couple more scenes just because I prepared them. And by the way, go to the description text below, and there's a link. You can sign up and download a lot of these files. All right, a bunch of these files, I made them for download.
Yeah, I was just talking about this. So sometimes we can actually get a few issues with this link. So I've had it before that I've needed to change my browser, and in some cases, I know this isn't the best answer. I've had to just try 3 or 4 times. And then the link will eventually connect. It's a new system that we're trying out. So it comes with a couple of issues, as does new things. But it should work. Try a new browser, or try just repeatedly opening, and then I do promise it does eventually work.
Eventually it does.
Mm-hmm.
So let me quickly show a few of the examples. I'm not going to put full screen. So this is, again, me playing randomly. I think what I did, I got the random field. This is similar to that curl noise I did, but then I thought, why don't I make a quantized mechanism, which is just you multiply something, you round it. So these are the little tricks I've learned when using nodes. If you want to create something that's quantized, so 10 quantized 4 would be 0, 2.5, 5, 7.5, or something like that. Okay, don't kill me, but something like that. Quantizing, you just multiply a number by the number you want, then you round it. Sorry, is it multiply? Yeah, then you round it, and then you divide it, and something like that. It may be totally wrong, but or first you divide it. No, you multiply it, you round it to the closest 10, and then you divide it. Excellent, and that's how you quantize. And I just use this to control the angle so they don't go nice and swirly around. Again, these are just experiments that I did in the very early hours or late hours. I showed you this simple sine curve. We saw this. We saw the curl noise. Let's see if this is another curl noise here, something like that. Right, this is a more quantized curl noise for FUY thingies. This is another little thing where they're just flying in one direction and they're doing little random sine waves. And this is a setup for this. Again, it's not tremendously difficult. Probably I've done it wrong, and anyone that has used nodes a bit more than I have will be screaming at their screens now. And let me see if I have, no. So all the scenes I just showed you are available in the download. So you can just download them through that link and play around with them. Yes, that's what is that what I have? I mean, I'm having fun now, you see. Don't tell anyone. Twirly particles, we saw the twirly particles. So curl noise. Yeah, I think we saw what we need to see.
Also, like you said, if people have kind of specific ideas, that's great, like for the pair of us and for the whole training team to be able to learn how to take these tools and, you know, create the things that you actually want to see. So definitely feel free to email us at training@maxon.net those specific ideas and sort of animations that you'd want to know how to create, and then we get the fun of figuring it out and then doing it as a live stream.
Yep. And yes, we will get to as many of those as you can. If you want to contact me on Twixer, that's my handle at NosemanGR. Twixer is Twitter or X or whatever. So, yeah, Twixer. My DMs are open, and I don't open weird links or anything like that. But if it's sort of reputable Dropbox, something like that, a Cinema 4D file, I may take a look at that. And yeah, I think we've come to the end of this session. There's so much depth to this. You know, it's not the easiest thing. And don't forget, January, Dominic Rookley. We're going to do nodes. We're going to do particles. And yeah, send your questions and ideas and all that, because I need other people's ideas. I am like an AI. I do not operate until other people give me their ideas so I can create solution. Oh my God, I'm a statistical model.
I'm the opposite. So, little backstory for everyone. What happens is I think of something that I wish I could do, and then I tend to send Thanasis a message and ask him to teach me how to do it. And then I tend to then claim it as my own information on a live stream. That's my normal process.
Yeah, good. And you know, Elly, you can always ask me.
And I always will.
Okay, everyone. Again, thank you very much for joining us. I'm looking for the buttons I need to press to close the show. There it is. There's the end screen. So thank you for hanging out with us. Download Cinema 4D 2025.1. Check these things out. Check the scenes. Ask your questions. And I'm looking forward to doing more deep and wide and complex tutorials about these things. And don't be shy to ask questions. Have a nice day.
Bye, everyone.